welcome back to Foster Care Uncovered, episode 26. I'm here today, as I am every week, with the fantastic Sarah Anderson, who is sitting in front of me at the other side of the country, looking as gorgeous as ever, in black. She's back in black. So, welcome, everyone. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, good morning. And you're looking just as ravishing and in lovely patterned green and bright and loveliness. And yes, I can't, I'm back in black today. Maybe that's a measure of how I'm just feeling a bit meh this week. But I did, what we have to do today is something we're not very good at.
What's
Boundaries. We rattled on for an hour and 40 minutes last week.
Yeah.
So we've just spoken about it, haven't we? And we're going to be very boundaries. We're going to finish in 50 minutes.
Yeah. So get on with it then.
Yeah. It's our new format, 50 minutes, because the others are way too long to get on with it.
Crack on.
So hi, everybody. Lovely to have you here. I'll get on with it then. So in the news. Okay, so the news this week, been a bit of a quieter one, actually, Louise, in the news this week. A small lull, I have no doubt, as ever quiet. Nothing's ever quiet for long in fostering, is it?
No.
What we found in the news, again, one thing this week is private equity. And it seems that the newspapers are really ramping this up. The media's ramping this up. Private equity in fostering, residential and fostering. There were two pieces that stood out at the weekend, both in The Guardian, actually. One looked at private equity spreading across almost every corner of care, not just children's services, but the wider system. And another, a much more direct one, called Treating Children Like Cattle. And that was again focusing on private equity and children's care. Not exactly subtle reading over your morning coffee, but we usually say commodity, don't we? But I think that makes a good headline, Treating Children Like Cattle. I think it's very easy, actually, for these conversations to slide into something really linear. And I've always said that. Profit in care, full stop. And I think we then lose the distinction between profit and profiteering. And then it all gets reduced to headlines, sound bites, and policy made in a bit of a rush, usually with a selected group of voices that already fit the direction of travel. And we've seen that, haven't we, for years? And everything quickly becomes very binary. Council good, private bad, end of discussion. But we know it's not that simple. And when services are bought, however, I will say, when services are bought, leveraged and packaged and sold on again, an investor return becomes part of the DNA of somehow something is run, it does change the system. It's optimizing, changes what it's optimizing every time. And of course, that becomes profit. If you've got private equity involved, that is the biggest problem. I've seen so many agencies that were really lovely family agencies. People loved being in them. And the minute they were taken over by an FG or something else like that, they suddenly said, it's not the same. The managers are on edge. Now we're getting picked up on things that we weren't, it doesn't seem to be a relationship anymore. Many have transferred. It does change the nature of the agencies. Maybe not all of them, but, anyway, it does get flattened, this conversation. Media lumping it all together, private equity, legal homes, ordinary private providers, long-standing agencies, good homes doing good solid work, all get thrown under one umbrella labelled the problem. And then on top of that, the messaging from government doesn't help with clarity. So the Children's Minister, Josh McAllister, says he's taking a very hard line on private equity and profiteering in children's social care, talking about price gouging, eye-watering profits, and he's not going to flinch on capping them. So far, so good. Then in the next breath, the solution seems to be asking the same private equity-backed providers to volunteer to reduce their profits. It feels like there's some strange belief that we have just stern enough conversations, private equity will suddenly discover a conscience. But these firms exist for a reason, to extract the highest possible return for investors. It's not a criticism, it's a business model. So asking them voluntarily to make less money isn't taking a hard line. It's asking them to ignore the very reason they exist. I thought it was, to me, what's it like? You know what? It's like appealing to the better nature of a shark while you're standing in the water. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Shark. Terribly sorry to bother you. Would you mind volunteering to be a bit less shark-like today? I'd quite like to keep both my legs, if that's all right. I know eating me is your entire business model, but if you could just, not and fill out this voluntary pledge to be slightly less predatory, that would be lovely. And then, of course, the shark nods and eats you anyway. That's essentially the conversation the government are having with private equity. But hey, you've got to admire their optimism, haven't you? And then, of course, we could ask Louise, are they really that daft, or is it all a bit murky? What do you think?
Well, I would go along with all it's all a bit murky, especially as I'm listening to you, Sarah. I'm thinking about isn't Josh McAllister, doesn't he own his own private companies as well? Isn't he got his own things going on? Are they private? Are
Well,
they
we're going to be looking into that, aren't we? I don't know that they're private companies, but
but he's got something
charities.
going on, isn't
Well,
it?
he had
Uh,
was he did found Frontline, but he stepped
an
back from that to
education
be a
one.
minister. He's just set up something new though. So I will have a yes, I saw that and
Right.
then I looked it up and I was like, oh, look at that. So we'll have a look at that and you're going to make an announcement later where that might be pertinent.
Oh, I think so. But, listening to you, Sarah, as always, I just ask myself, you're right. Asking a private equity firm to voluntarily reduce its own profits is a bit like asking a cat to voluntarily hand back the goldfish. It's not the operating model, Sarah. The clue is in the name. Equity firms exist to grow equity. Expecting altruism from the structure itself is it's a category error, not a policy. And here's what gets lost in the council good, private bad binary. I've lived in both systems as a child and as a carer, and the postcode you're born into determines which one you get far more than the logo above the door. Some independent fostering agencies have been quietly excellent for 30 years, run by people who started as social workers because they actually wanted to do the job well. Lump them in with leveraged buyout vehicles, and you punish exactly the providers who are propping up the system. What we actually need is actually financial transparency as a requirement. Follow the money through the holding companies, the debt structures, the dividend recapitalizations, not a vibes-based morality tale, which is a good headline and story, which keeps it rumbling along with no outcome. If a provider's profit is coming from genuinely better outcomes and lower placement breakdown, fine, that's a profit worth having. If it's coming from cutting staff ratios and packaging vulnerable children as an asset class for a pension fund in the Cayman Islands, that's not profit, that's extraction. The minister's talking tough while hoping for a gentleman's agreement tells me he knows the difference, but hasn't yet found the nerve or the legislative tool to act on it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Um, that's a very good point. What would be the legislative tool? But the problem is, you then get into the Wales situation where they've banned all profit from children's care, but it's an absolute disaster.
I
Most
know.
of it's not happening. Most of it's not. I mean, when you look behind that and stop looking at the headlines, um, it's really just a sort of virtue signaling political stance, that it's not working.
No.
And Wales are in, disaster zone as far as
Well,
placements are
they
concerned. And,
kicked out the walking stick, the crutch from under
yeah, yeah.
the
They're
aid.
throwing out the baby with the bathwater,
Yes, and that
basically.
was stupid until you have some kind of transference in this and you've thought
Mm,
it through. But as I always say, in the murky world of children's social care,
mm.
and it's quite extensive, a lot of it is image managed. A lot of this
Yes,
stuff
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
just white noise while nothing happens.
And also, I think a theme of this, probably the next couple of things as well, a theme of it is it's an own goal.
Yeah, I know.
If the local authorities have been any good at what they do with foster carers, etc., like Foster Wales, 22 local authorities who told me one day that they didn't think it was worth educating foster carers because they're just pulling them off the street. And
Well,
I
said
swear
that out loud.
that was in said it out loud in a meeting, yes, with 22 local
Yeah,
authorities. I was trying to tell them what the national qualifications were all about, but they
yeah.
just weren't. They were all sat there like a sulky bunch of kids, um, like they'd been made to come along to my meeting. You know, one spent 15 minutes mansplaining to me, excuse me to the men out there who don't mansplaining to me about this incredibly high quality training they had, and or what it was all about and everything, and I should go and research it. You know what it turned out to be?
But
Skills to foster. I mean, couldn't make it up anyway. I digress. But
let's crack on.
they in Wales, it
Mm,
is not working. And also,
no.
all they do is the private agencies, even the those backed by private equity. I don't know quite what's going on. I'm just going on what other people have been saying, but we could look into it a bit deeper. They just changed, like they did in Scotland, to this non-profit model, but it doesn't mean to say they're not still making huge profits. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother. They
Well, no,
just find
vehicles.
other
Yeah,
financial
yeah.
vehicles
They
to
find another one.
circumnavigate. Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
no,
So,
they just have a
and
postcode in
then, but
England.
then the government can go, oh, we've got no more profit in children's services. Oh, you have. I mean, even you take tact. That's Andy Elvin's outfit, isn't it? The children and something. Anyway, it's you know, they go on about being the biggest children and fostering and adoption charity in the country. They're not. They're just a private agency registered as a charity. And like I always say, Eton School is registered as a
Yeah,
charity. So think about that. They're registered as a charity, but you know, the CEO is probably on double the price, double the salary of, say, the fostering network or whatever, you know, not that that's a comparable thing, but double what a local DCS would be. And I know that because when Kevin Williams moved to the fostering network, I had a conversation with him and he'd just left tact. And he told me what he was on there. And he's took lot less to be at the fostering network. I was great. I loved him. He did a great job. But anyway, tact. So tact still charged the local authority a lot of money for a placement for a child in
interesting.
a
I
home.
met. Yeah,
Then they make a profit. I think they've got about 20 million sitting in their bank, but they spend it on their children. Now, my question is, who are they to play God on which children get that kind of money spent on them?
I think this whole sector plays God, though, Sarah. And I met Andy Alvin years ago after my first book came out because he was running a charity. So when we, I think, had was when we first met, I was I was dashing around, trying to pull together somehow a kind of ethics, a kind of reaching out to people that might also feel that then my understanding of profiteering and just the sort of standards that I saw in children's social. And I remember going to Andy Alvin's office, which I'll expand on another meeting. And I remember he kept saying, "We only earn enough to keep the lights on." There are a lot of bloody lights, aren't there?
A lot of lights,
Lighting
a
up the
huge. I mean,
O2.
it's basically the Blackpool illuminations.
I think so. Plus a huge load of festival lights.
Oh, should we move on?
Let's do it.
Right. Okay, look, I'm not gonna let's put this to bed, but I'm going to speak about it in a different way. It's the relaunch of the Fostering Network's Allegations Toolkit. Firstly, I do think it was, as I said in the previous podcast, I think it was a bit previous because we're all like, we personally at Foster Wiki have had several meetings with the Department for Education. We had one a couple of weeks ago, just on our own, about the national minimum standards and, you know, rewriting them, if you like. Now, that includes all the allegations stuff as well. And the Department for Education have been investigating allegations, and we've yet to hear the outcomes of that as well, the consultations, all the rest of it. So I do think it seems a bit previous to dive in But I can see why they've done it. It's basically one great big marketing tool. Everywhere you look in the toolkit is why they should be hiring the fostering network, why they should be the advocacy for support, and also a rather curious paragraph where they literally try to emotionally blackmail the local authorities and agencies into that every carer should have their access to their legal line, and it would be a lack of their duty of not to do it, and yet their legal line, as I've said before, is ARC Legal, who are not fostering specific. They do not support anyone in an allegation. In fact, last week, as I said before, a couple of weeks ago, a carer told me when she'd rung up, they said, oh no, we don't support people in criminal activity. So yeah, so that's a bit of one. Anyway, I've had messages asking me if I'm going to review it or not, whether I think it's better than the first version. The honest answer is I could spend hours going through the changes they've made. But firstly, I can't be bothered. And secondly, I think we're missing a much more interesting conversation here. For me, the toolkit itself isn't the real story. It's what it represents, I find fascinating. When that first version came out, the reaction from foster carers wasn't just disagreement over the wording or anything like that. It was visceral. Do you remember?
Yeah.
They were angry, frustrated. The morale had been damaged, trust, confidence. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, it was quite a defining moment. And I think it has become a particular symbol of something that's been happening quietly over the years. Everything that arrives in this form, every document, every new policy guide, not policy guide, but every new guide, like the latest foundation thing, is it says it's here to support us, but collectively it does something else. It doesn't explain the system anymore, it shapes it. They start influencing what good practice looks like or how decisions should be made. And ultimately, how professionals must think about risk and how foster carers are expected to behave and what should be done to them, not with them. Now, that's quite significant because statutory guidance is one thing. That's the legal framework that everyone has to work within. But when organisations start producing large amounts of practice guidance that gradually becomes embedded into everyday fostering, those documents begin to carry the level of influence that goes far beyond the minimum standards and regs and stuff. And that's how culture works, isn't it? Nobody ever sits down and says, right, this is now a legal requirement. It becomes, that's the way we've always done it, so we're going to be doing it this way. We've talked about it, haven't we? Form F, skills to foster. People talk about them as though they've been handed down on stone tablets. They haven't. They're commercial products sold. Listen to this, right? They are commercial products sold by membership organisations. That's all they are. Yet somewhere along the line, they become so embedded that you'd be forgiven for thinking that they were written by Ofsted or they were an Ofsted requirement. They're not. They've just become the default because everyone keeps using it and telling everybody else to keep using it. That's why I think this conversation matters. It's not about whether one paragraph has been improved or whether one sentence has been softened. It's about asking who gets to shape the culture and the narrative of fostering. So I think a couple of things struck me. Firstly, they can rewrite the toolkit as many times as they like. They can soften the language, change the tone, tell everyone they've listened. But let's not confuse a strategic rewrite with a change of philosophy. When an organisation's biggest income stream comes from, selling allegation support to local authorities and agencies for foster carers, it's perfectly reasonable to understand that, because their main income, these people, some of their main income is derived on the back of foster carers. And, it's about transparency, isn't it? It's well known that carers can come out of allegations without legal representation, without any caseworker defence or anything. Now, all throughout that toolkit, there's not one mention of any other support organisation, no mention of peer support organisations, no mention of the union anywhere, even though by October it's a legal requirement.
Mm.
But nothing. Instead, it's you have to hire us, you have to do this, you have to do, subtle in places, but exactly what it's saying. And then the emotional blackmail of you'll be leaving your carers in danger almost if you don't hire us for our legal team, which is not what it looks like. So is the new version improvement? On the surface? Yes, I suppose so. But underneath, I don't see any fundamental change. The first toolkit, however, this is important bit, revealed how foster carers were viewed, not as equal professionals, but as people to be managed, infantilized, dismissed. Okay, guilty before proven guilty, and then they took away any semblance of outcomes, malicious and false, that could exonerate them. And we've already discussed it on that very weak evidence. Well, it's not even evidence. They used the Starr Hobson case to try and manipulate and shoehorn it into something that it completely wasn't. So I'd like to say, if anything, the language is softer now. They talk about relational and all those trendy things, but the underlying assumptions don't look any different at all. I'd say the first edition was a wolf. The second edition is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Interesting.
What do you think?
Well, I'll be honest here. I'm sitting in my studio, and behind me is a shelf that could double up as a small monument to fostering paperwork, toolkits, frameworks, charters. If guidance documents were calories, the sector would have collapsed under its own weight years ago. And you're right that nobody objects to safeguarding. What carers object to is being managed by document rather than trusted relationship. And that has to be a genuine relationship, not just words. And I think that when you're seeing, I'm seeing, I'm sure our foster carer friends out there are seeing that when they know they've gone a bit too far, they throw in the words, don't they? Relational,
Yeah.
belonging,
Yeah.
love, and it's a sort of way of it's like buying
Muttering.
flowers, muttering,
Mutter-
muttering.
Give
It's a
them
way
away
of
like
buying.
flowers.
It's as after
But they're
gaslighting,
flowers with that squeegee thing in the middle that spray you
the
with water
roses
if
with
you
lots of
sniff them or you get an
thorns.
electric
To
shock. Yeah.
stop. Exactly. You know, what carers, as I said, what carers object is feeling that we're constantly being managed. We're not actually working with them. We're having it done to us. There's a useful comparison here with how trust works in any other profession that handles risks. Let's go to the surgeon model. I like a surgeon model because I think carers are pretty surgical as well. A surgeon doesn't get a fresh 40-page toolkit every time public confidence wobbles because the system trusts their training and their judgment. Why doesn't it trust ours, considering that the training was designed by them? Training, annual reviews, supervision, and generally rigorous process. And then the moment something goes wrong anywhere in the country, the answer is always another document rather than better support for the individual carer in front of you. So that's another way of saying they let it go wrong. It's their training, their scrutiny of us, their training and education of us. If it goes wrong, we are punished with more documents and more training. So obviously we really look forward to more training. So that's not safeguarding culture, is it? That's risk management. It's a risk management theatre. That's what it feels like. Like it's a bit show busy, and they're all actors sort of pretending that we don't know. And the two get confused far too often. And that goes back to the culture because, if you say it enough, it's fake it till you make it. So they'll keep saying it until it's embedded into their culture, into our culture. But all I ask is people to resist that. And anybody's asking who actually wrote it, who did actually write it? Because we've forgotten, haven't we? Because we mentioned last
The
week.
allegations toolkit. Actually, I looked into that, which is
Yeah.
rather interesting. The three people that seem to be attributed to writing it are the CEO of the Fostering Network, who came down from Wales,
Mm.
and two people also closely related to her work there in Wales. So I can happy to thingy on that, but I did look up, I saw the names, so I looked them up, and they're all, from that exact same club, if you like, in Wales, Fostering Network Wales, and which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what it does do is it makes it very close shop, a very close discussion, all agreeing with each other, no challenge, no. They also say they consulted a lot of foster carers. They don't really. I mean, maybe they consult their board or whatever, but they're all on song, all on message. No, it's not rigorous. And also, as I say, to be honest, Louise, it's just one big PR document. It's what it
Yeah,
really is. It's
it's a
not.
shame, isn't
It's a
it? It's a
PR document.
It's a shame, and it's like Form F and all the other stuff. They're written by organisations, and we do think that somehow it's a law. It's not the law.
No,
That's precisely the gap I think a program like the toolkit, like this, should be poking at. Not whether paragraph 4 is gentler than it used to be, which they obviously with the rewrite they're trying to soften it, but who holds the pen in the first place? We don't want a little group of people who all know each other that have never fostered to write stuff.
no.
Every week it goes on as a foster carer, an active foster carer. I look at the training and I look at people who are trying to tell us how to do it, and I keep saying to myself, what do you know? You don't do it.
Mm,
I think that's the thing that a lot of foster carers are waking up to, because it's influence without accountability, isn't it? When you have a little group of people who, or you get the consultants or you get the policymakers, you get influence without accountability is how we end up with a workforce that feels watched rather than valued, because we don't feel valued, which, funny enough, is exactly the kind of thing that makes good carers walk away.
totally is. Totally is. I actually had an insider at they put on a webinar about the toolkit and how to work it or whatever, I guess it was. But and this person went along and said all they did, because she sent back notes and everything from me, all they did basically was read out the whole toolkit.
Right.
And there were a few other chosen people doing some input. Nobody was allowed to ask a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get to the naughty step, shall we?
Oh, I love the naughty step.
I know. Shall I do the naughty step introduction? I don't know how enthusiastic it's going to be this week because I'm a bit meh. Boop, 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 boop.
That's pathetic. Come on, crack on.
Okay. So this week's naughty step, the local authorities and the agencies and the government and the ministers will be so pleased because none of them are on it. This week, we're getting a little bit, we're getting power mad here, Louise. This week, a
That
whole
big day.
country's on it.
Whole world.
Scotland is the winner
Oh,
of this week's esteemed award. Before anyone writes in, this isn't about Scotland bashing. It's about how every crisis has a history. They don't suddenly appear overnight. They arrive after years of warnings that everyone's ignored. This week, Scotland's 32 chief social workers issues an extraordinary joint statement saying that the country's care system is now in acute emergency. This isn't the headline, this isn't the media, this isn't us. This is 32 chief social worker officers in Scotland. Acute emergency. They're talking about social workers taking children home. That's a whole different thing of whatever. They're talking about newborn babies staying in hospital, 3-year-olds being placed alongside much, much older children sleeping on foster care sofas. And we know, don't we, all the other unsuitable
yeah.
places they're put. Foster carers going, they said months without respite. I'm a bit like,
That's
you've been
nothing
out
new.
months,
Years in my case.
years without respite. And specialist placements because are used for everyone because there's no other option. And I might add to that as well because I think Mockingbird is Mockingbird is favoured by Scotland people, but not all, 4%, of course. But that why that model goes right out the window and how you never hear about it is because a lot of those central hub leaders who are supposed to be the ones that have the children for respite when the carers need a break are getting filled with all these emergency placements. I've had so many times that they can't get respite because the hub leader is full. Now that breaks the whole entire model of what Mockingbird was set up for. So when senior social workers are saying that publicly, that is it's gone beyond a red flag, isn't it? I don't think we need to invent a new saying after a red flag.
That's an SOS help.
Scotland's never lacked ambition, though. It's had reviews, reform programmes, and of course, it's had the promise, which, to be fair, was a thoughtful vision for children's care, more so than anywhere in the UK, perhaps. Much of it's hard to disagree with, building around relationships, continuity, doing better for children. But here's the question. If the vision was so good, why did today's headlines sound so familiar and are suddenly so formal when it was launched 6 years ago? So that obviously hasn't worked, has it? The universal truth, and we're back to that same old chestnut again, if foster carers feel unheard, unsupported, financially stretched, and I know the pay in Scotland is really bad, or simply they decided they've had enough of the treatment and they leave. And I've actually had my feet under lots and lots of kitchen tables in Wales. When I was at the Union particularly, and after when I was with the Alliance, I went up there, visited Scotland, very, very fond of Scotland and its carers. But of course, I always met up with the ones that weren't the chosen ones. I met up with the majority carers in big meetings and in their homes to hear what was really going on. And it was heartbreaking. So it's not really a recruitment crisis, is it? At the end result of this crisis is born out of a retention crisis, been building for years. Mm-hmm. And despite us all shouting it from the rooftops, we've been universally, haven't we, ignored, dismissed. After all, Louise, what do we know, eh?
What do we know? We've been doing this since like forever. Well, I just find it so shocking. Those social workers are literally bringing their work home with them. And, two things there before I get stuck in is have these social workers been checked? Have they been through the scrutiny process? I doubt it. And on the other side of this, I would love those social workers to see how they feel after they fostered as to before. So maybe all social workers should take their children home with them because my golly, oh, did I just say that? My golly, I've gone all 50. Wouldn't it? I'm trying to avoid.
We can't say all the other words we normally say.
Like you got beep last week. I saw that card. When you said a rude word. So by golly, it's shocking. A vision document is only as good as the bank balance and the bed count behind it. Let's be clear about that. And you can't promise a nation's children's continuity and relationship while simultaneously running out of beds for them to sleep in. The promise was never short of ambition. This is true. It's one of the better pieces of strategic thinking I've read on care reform anywhere in these islands. I'm not claiming the world, just these little islands that we walk around. But ambition without capacity is just a beautifully worded waiting list. What strikes me about social workers taking children home is that it's the system's own safety valve finally blowing. This is it. This is it. This is it. And it won't be long till this happens in England too. Not a one-off. This is it. This is what crisis looks like. That's not a crisis happening to Scotland. That's Scotland's own workforce quietly and less quietly telling on the system in real time because there's nowhere else left for the truth to go. You can't cover it up, whitewash it, bring in fancy schmancy words and pretend it's all right. Because in England, this is just round the corner. And the bit that should really worry people is that a 3-year-old sharing a placement with a much older children isn't an administrative inconvenience, it's a safeguarding decision made by the absence of choice. So that throws safeguarding out the window. Think of the future lawsuits that they'll be coming their way, which is precisely the kind of decision none of us went into this to make. I'd also gently push back on calling it a purely Scottish story. Strip out the tartan, and you've essentially described any day of the week in half the local authorities south of the border, too. The honest headline isn't Scotland in crisis, it's UK's fostering capacity has been running on fumes for years, and we kept telling them, Sarah, and
We kept
we
telling them.
kept telling them. Somebody finally said it out loud. Credit to those 32 chief social work
Yeah,
officers for putting their names to it. Well done, you. Come on, social workers. This has got to be affecting you as much as it is us. That takes a fair amount of professional courage. Hats off to you. And it's exactly the kind of plain speaking the rest of the system could do with borrowing.
absolutely. And yeah, definitely shout out to them, because you have to be brave to do that. Luckily, but what they showed, though, is in whistleblowing, is that
Yeah,
what they showed was a strength in numbers.
yeah,
So this is, it's always been my message to carers. We have strength in numbers, and
yeah,
that is really, really growing now.
yeah.
Because also, don't forget, as foster carers, we actually are the commodity that run the show, and we start to need to start behaving like it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we
Look what's
can't let
happening.
them destroy something we are passionate about.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So actually, kind of segues into the next section, doesn't it? Which is has been on everyone's lips again a lot recently, even more so than ever, because the cost of living for foster carers right now is hideous. The petrol and the diesel, it's gone up so much. No one ever gets any more mileage or any more money for it. None of the allowances change. All but, the government keep going, we put them up every year like 3%, like what's that, £5 or something. I bought 2 ice creams the other day
Yeah.
it was my hubby and me, albeit it was in Stockbridge, which is a bit of a posh village, but
I know, I've been there.
oh, it's very pretty. But two ice
Carrots are £2
creams,
each.
9.95.
What? Now you go and take 4 children out.
I know.
You
And
can't, can
all
you?
right, not no, no. But if you buy a cone and all the rest of it, it's not £1 anymore, is it?
No.
So also, what about the cinema?
Oh, that's just you have to wait for the you get those tokens, don't you? You have to start
It's
hoovering those.
outrageously expensive. So, and never mind sort of things like, even when you get bog offs, going to sort of Chessington, Alton Towers, all the things that children expect because other children are doing it. But an everyday general living is so expensive now because, of course, heating our houses, keeping the lights on, the food things. I know my Waitrose bill has shot up.
Oh my God, mine too. My don't
I
drive to
only say
Marco's.
that
It is
because
outrageous.
Louise was digging at me yesterday. She said, "What are you up to?" I said, "Oh, I'm watching Wimbledon, doing my Waitrose shopping on my app."
Yeah, I just come back from
And then
Lidl's.
I realized what I'd said.
Yeah,
Sounded like some. Anyway, that's not how I am. I'm very poor.
it
So
is
anyone wants to give me
everyone. It
donations,
is.
please.
Don't you believe a
They're
word
probably
of
saying,
it.
if you shop at Wynwood, Waitrose now. But no, I buy their essentials. I buy their essential ironing water and their essential quail's eggs.
But
I
you can't. It's
just,
like Mark.
uh,
But you'll love this. One of my foster children that when she moved, because we're big on food. We love food. I think that's
we
where
love food.
money goes. Is she now? I tease her and say, "You were actually born with a Waitrose basket in your hand, weren't you?" And she said to me the other day, she said, "I've done some comparables, and actually, Marks and Spencer's food hall is the same price as Tesco's." I said, "I
Really?
know, lovey, I know, but every Marks and Spencer's is in the town. And I'm not lugging all that
Yeah.
stuff back to the car. Thank you very much." So I love it. I love the
I
fact.
love it.
Yeah.
Oh, when children arrive, they're very they don't cost a lot. I usually just have an enormous jar of super noodles, and it's that
Right.
or buttered toast.
Yeah, you
Nothing
can
that
do
those
some
things won't
food.
fix. But after a while, they start getting into everything we're eating, and they become mini gourmets.
Okay. I don't. They have butter on their toast, and they go, "Oh, sorry. This is the unsalted butter, isn't it? I like the salted butter."
Love it. I love it. There's a
You
part of me that really
already
loves it,
ate chicken nuggets not so long ago.
Yeah. Oh, are we having spaghetti vongole again tonight? That's lovely. Anyway, good, because they're all out there, I have to say now, my children, cooking these fantastic meals. And pasta can be very cheap when you're a student.
Yeah,
So, but back to the seriousness, this is a big thing that's been hitting a lot of people at the moment, a lot of carers.
big
This
time.
question of pay stopping, in allegations, in between having placements, that's quite a different one. But let's have a look at it on holiday. So we're still seeing these numbers of carers put in such these increasingly impossible financial situations. And it's one of the big issues. What happens when pay suddenly stops? And again, people will say, oh, no, you can't say that about fostering. But you can't what? Not tell the truth? Anyway, this is where fostering's strange, almost made up employment model really starts to show the cracks. We're told we're self-employed. When this suits the system, we're treated like employees. When it suits them, we're just completely self-employed. We have the worst of both worlds, and they have the cake and eat it, don't they? Take allegations, for example. In many areas, payments just stop if the children are taken away, and it happens frequently, or they go down a bit and then they go down a bit more, and within a couple of weeks you've got nothing. And don't forget, allegations go on for months. So the other one is carers don't get paid between placements. So a child leaves, another one might not come in for 4 or 5 weeks if you're lucky, and the pay disappears. Now, then they use that old line, don't they? As, oh, well, you should have put some aside. This is going to happen. Put what aside? Put what aside? Um, and unlike self-employed people and other self-employed people, we can't just go out and pick up another job while we're waiting for a child to come into our homes, or we're waiting there expecting for children to be returned. In fact, we are actively discouraged from working because fostering needs us to be, available. One carer recently told me that she'd been told she couldn't work and look after babies at the same time. Then she said her husband had to take a job because they had a couple of babies, but husband had to take a job to make ends meet. Do you know they were almost under a standards of care for that, investigation for that? Well, we have to know what the job is if we approve whether you can do it. This
They
is
think they
front.
are.
I know this goes on the front line. Um, I think that it's hard in payments between placements because between children coming into your home. It's hard. I don't want to call them placements, but so be it. It's hard being paid then because there will always be those that take advantage of that. But perhaps they could have a system where 3 strikes and you're out. If you refuse 3 children in the row, then
Yeah.
the payments stop. There has to be something. Some, again, postcode lottery. Some will pay a little, but most pay none. Most
No.
pay none in allegations or just a little, none in those gaps. And also, this massive inequality in not having paid holiday. When you go on your holiday, it's a break. It's to rest, recuperate, and come back the best you can be. We don't go on holiday to the Bahamas because we're going to have a jolly time. Actually, we go away or we even stay at home just to rest, reset, recuperate, not from the children, but from the whole system. This financial insecurity, what have you got about to say about that, Louise?
Well, Lloyd and I have lived this particular contradiction for years. Self-employed enough to carry all the risks, employed enough to lose all the freedom. You can't tell someone they must be available 24 hours a day for a child who might arrive tonight and then tell them to go and find a second income to tide them over the quiet weeks. Pick a lane, guys, pick a lane.
Mm.
To put to put some money aside line genuinely makes me laugh out loud in the way you laugh at things that would otherwise make you cry. Savings requires surplus, and surplus requires a wage that covers more than the actual cost of raising a traumatized child, plus your own mortgage and all your other overheads. Most carers I know aren't underspending, they're under resourced. There's a difference, and it's not a subtle one. And the allegations point deserves its own headline, frankly. An allegation is, by definition, unproven. Yet, in some areas, we punish carers financially the moment one is made unproven, as though the investigation itself is the verdict. Imagine telling any other profession that their salary stops the day someone complains before a single fact has been established. We'd call that constructive dismissal anywhere else, wouldn't we? In fostering, we call it your regular day. If the sector wants carers to stay, it might start by not bankrupting the ones it hasn't even finished investigating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that makes my
It's
blood boil, actually. I'm sitting here getting quite hot.
yeah. No other.
Yeah,
It's again, it's that it's the thing is it's that way of taking advantage of our working status, really, which we have none. Well, we
cheeky.
do have one. We have a working status. We're
Yeah,
self-employed and we have to register as such. So we don't not have a, being self-employed is a working status. You have to register as such. But even the government's own HMRC classification shows so clearly that we're not just workers. We're workers. Workers is in between self-employed and self-employed. So sorry, employed and self-employed. So but this. I suppose this is why they're fighting it so hard through the courts. They don't want us to get paid in between
yeah, but you
having
can't
younger
have it
people.
both ways.
You can't
They
have it both
can't have it
ways.
both ways.
Well,
No
they're
one
not
can
having
have
it
it
both
both
ways, have
ways.
we? They've already announced an acute crisis in Scotland.
Yeah, I think people are voting with their feet because they can't have it both ways. So social workers are going to become the new foster carers whilst holding down their jobs. And actually, let the sector see the reality of the outcome of treating foster carers so
Mm,
badly for so many years. Right,
yeah.
enough of that money. That really
Yes.
wound me up, that one, because
Yeah.
anyway,
But
it's
I
something.
think it's something that the union are looking at. But I've had conversations with quite a lot of people because it's a really hot potato to how you sort it. Because I believe in a meritocracy as we live in one. I think that I don't think a 15-year experienced foster carer with all the skills, the training, and all the rest of it that might be taking on the most challenging teenagers should they should be paid exactly the same as a foster carer on day one.
I know.
I
They don't
don't
they,
believe that. So it has
they
to
don't-
be, do we pay in France they pay a one payment
yeah.
per month. I think it's like, I don't know, a £1,500 a month. And then on top of that, each young person, child comes in and mixed with whatever skill level you are, you get a payment for that. So, but they can't do that in this country because they'd have to make a new law for it because that's not set in
Well,
statute
they
at
can
all.
do, but they're going to have to
Yeah.
make it more attractive because, as we can see in Scotland, and I can guarantee that be coming here soon, people are voting with their feet, and they cannot have it both ways. Right,
Mm.
let's get on to something
Yes.
really
Now, something
exciting.
very
Woo,
exciting.
it's so exciting.
It's coming soon because it takes a lot of research and getting it right and hiring very expensive lawyers.
Yeah, and that. Right. It,
So Louise, over to you.
yes. Well, this is really interesting and really
Can
exciting.
you do the music?
We need the music. Ready for the music?
Ooh, I haven't got the music.
That's
See if
right.
Carl can
Okay,
put the music
listeners,
in.
in case you're worried that you were,
Ooh.
oh my goodness, that's not anywhere close. In case you're wondering what that little sound was from Sarah, that was Sarah's impersonation of the music
Ex-
X Files. Yeah, right. You need some work on that, but we will have our own real music. Okay, so I've just let the cat out of the bag. Right.
Mm.
It's time we told you about something we've been working on for a long time. Coming soon to Foster Care Uncovered, the F Files. Yes, you heard it here first. The F Files. Stop giggling over there. Every week, we'll open another file, a person, an organization, an idea, sometimes a policy, sometimes a partnership, sometimes a network so tangled you'll need a whiteboard and several colors of marker pens to even understand it. We'll follow the connections. We'll follow the money, honey. We'll follow the influence. And occasionally we'll find ourselves asking, hang on, it's the same people again. Now, before certain people wish to their lawyers, we've already spoken to ours, right? So put your speed dial back down and relax. We're not here to make things up. We'll only be talking about information that's already in the public domain, information that is already available if you know where to look, and we do. Annual reports, Companies House, charity accounts, policy papers, consultation responses, government documents, published interviews, the sort of things nobody has time to read until now, and we've done it for you. And where we discuss information that's been shared with us privately, we'll do what we always do. We'll assess the credibility of the source, use our judgment, make it clear where something is opinion rather than fact, and include the appropriate caveats. This is not about gossip. That's completely different. It's about understanding the system that we all find ourselves in. Because if we want to know why foster carers never seem to change, why foster care itself never seems to change, why every reform somehow ends up looking remarkably like the old one, with slightly different wording, why social workers are exhausted, foster carers are exhausted, managers are exhausted, directors of children's social care are exhausted, then perhaps it's time we stop looking at only the front line.
Yes, we should start looking at the architect, shouldn't we? Who designs the system, who advises government, who sits on those boards, who consults with whom, who commissions whom, who funds what, who benefits, and why the same names keep popping up wherever you go. The usual suspects. I think we're not telling people what to think. We're simply opening the F file and you can decide to make of what's inside, because somewhere between the policy papers and the consultation responses, the annual accounts, the meetings, the minutes, the story of foster care is hiding in plain sight, and it directly affects every foster carer, what's happening on the front line, why no change is forthcoming, and, the murky world of foster care.
Yeah,
Uncovered. Nice
exactly.
segue.
So, welcome to the F files next week. So that's the end, and everyone lived happily ever after with their big hearts and spare rooms.
You're not supposed to read that bit.
I know, but I feel a bit naughty today. Or as we say in our house,
That's on the
no,
script.
listen,
Everyone lived happily ever after.
yeah. Or as we say in our house, a spare heart and a big room. I
And
think
on that note, and don't forget to share this wide, like and subscribe or whatever anybody does. I don't. Yeah, it's on YouTube as well now. So all the episodes are on YouTube. So thank you so much for listening, everybody.
and all our foster carers, we're here for
Ah,
you. This is all for you. Please share
keep going,
other
keep
foster
going.
carers. We're with
Change
you.
will
We're in it.
come.
We're in it every day like you. So do
In it
your
together.
best. You're loved. You're cared
Yeah.
for. All right.
Lots of love.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.